In Azerbaijan, the United States has launched a campaign against its ambassador. Let it be. We do not interfere in the government's propaganda, especially if the United States supports the state on the one hand. It is a great state. It knows better than us what it will do or not do. I take it into consideration that I am not a citizen of this state, and I have no concern about it. The current ambassador of the United States is already in trouble. First, he came to Azerbaijan, made an appointment, and within 2 or 3 months they did not accept his appointment. In other words, he did not accept it officially. He took his head and went to his own country. Then he made a second trip, and this time they accepted it. Recently, American ambassadors have been dealing with culinary, and this time, in the most exaggerated way, we started with Robert Sakuta, who was an ambassador in Azerbaijan during the 2015-2018 years. Until then, ambassadors seemed to be satisfied with the Azerbaijani cuisine. But we admit that Mr. Sakuta was more of a culinarian. He acted as a private emissary sent to monitor the secrets of the Azerbaijani cuisine, based on the secret intelligence of the Azerbaijani state and the secret intelligence of the Azerbaijani special services. During the history of Azerbaijan's independence, 50% of the Azerbaijani ambassadors were engaged in serious political and diplomatic affairs, while the remaining 50% were engaged in serious cuisine and tourism matters. These are political priorities in another state of the state. Therefore, we cannot say why the states of America, Gambia, Portugal, and Burkina Faso set their priorities in Azerbaijan in this way. They had to do it, and they did it. We can only point out one of these ambassadors, and that is Mr. Stanley Escudero, who, as soon as the ambassadorship ended, spread the news that he accepted the Azerbaijani citizenship. The reason is not clear. The exact reason is not clear. There was a conversation that Mr. Escudero, as a victim of a motorcycle accident, sacrificed his career to the prospects of a man who was dear to him. But since there is no official news, we can say this as a possibility. Maybe he was such a platonic lover of the Azerbaijani cuisine or reality, so we insist that we have no obligation to go deeper. There was also Mithu Braiza. Although he did not accept the citizenship, he still continues to be on the side of the citizenship. But the current ambassador, Mr. Mark Libby, also touched on issues such as Gutav Kashkalapur, which angered the Azerbaijani government and started propaganda against the ambassador. The basis of the propaganda is that it was properly accepted in the East to lower political issues to the level of culinary. But to get a little more serious, we need to look at the analysis of the propaganda against Mark Libby. I met with the ambassador of the United States, Mark Libby, and I observed that in the interview with the ambassador, in addition to the other issues that upset him, he also expressed his objection to the freedom of free assembly in the country and the issues related to the upcoming parliamentary elections. However, the discussion of these issues as a priority issue is now of little importance in terms of the successful development of democratic processes. In this context, the political actors, who are members of the opposition parties that are close to social activists and journalists, should also be concerned, and this issue should not be forgotten. In general, in recent years, the approach that has become limited with the expressions of the civil society and the media in the West has not given enough support to democratic processes in the country for real support. In the example of Georgia and Armenia, we have witnessed a strong cooperation between the civil society and a political opposition. There has never been such a relationship in Azerbaijan. The reason is that the Western donors have demanded to keep a distance from the opposition in order not to irritate the government against the civil society representatives. However, as can be seen, this strong demand in Azerbaijan alone has not been met, and now the government is irritated. Despite this, today, the political opposition has not gone to any special election, and it is clearly defending the representatives of the social sector who are subject to repression. In the West, in relation to the issue of democracy in Azerbaijan, as a rule of law, the approach that supports the GHT sector is superior. As a result of the documents that were separated for this purpose, today, when we look at the potential of the society's resistance, we clearly see that this policy does not correct itself. The political opposition, which is the structured experience of political struggle and the real social base all over the world, has made the civil society a democratic transition in the country. The fact that the freedom of free gathering in the country is not guaranteed, and only by separating grants from the GHT sector, the democratic processes will not be opened, contrary to the current situation. So far, the West has acted with this approach in relation to Azerbaijan, and now it is up to them to question this approach. If the harsh reaction given to all the civil society representatives who are subject to Western donors today, the collapse of freedom of action, the inclusion of freedom of free gathering, and the introduction of barriers on democratic rights, and the demand for a democratic election was brought to the agenda sharply before the fake elections, then today's scenario would be different.